Senator Lindsey Graham, a senior member of the Senate Armed Services Committee. Senator Graham, thank you for joining us again this morning. You've read that New York Times report. You've seen the president's tweet this morning saying it is fake news. The president, the vice president, members of his team have consistently denied any contacts with Russia during the campaign. How do you reconcile that with the New York Times?
Well, number one, we're not going to make a decision based on what a newspaper says, but now's time for Congress to up its game. I do know this, that Russia is interfering in the democratic process all over the world. They're actually funding some parties that are pro-Russian and some other democracies. They're trying to break the backbone of democracies. They did hack into Podesta's email. They did hack into the DNC. They did share that with WikiLeaks to interfere in our election. That I believe. Now, here's the question. If there's contacts between the Trump campaign and Russian intelligence officials outside the norm, that's not only big league bad, that's a game changer. And I would change my view as to what Congress should do. If there are contacts between Trump officials and Russian intelligence operatives during the campaign, we need a joint select committee in Congress to get to the bottom of it and also look at Trump's business ties to Russia, if it is true.
Well, the New York Times report is based on intercepted communications. They quote four intelligence officials. So you're prepared to go forward and call for that joint committee?
I want to do a preliminary investigation where members of Congress, myself and Senator Whitehouse are overseeing the FBI's role in this. I want to make sure myself that these intercepts exist, that the communications are outside the norm. If that's the case, it's time for the Congress, in my view, the Senate, to do a joint select committee where we can look at it holistically, not in a compartmentalized way, to get to the bottom of it. Because if it is true, it is very, very disturbing to me, and Russia needs to pay a price when it comes to interfering in our democracy and other democracies. And any Trump person who was working with the Russians in a unacceptable way also needs to pay a price. And maybe none of it's true, but I can tell you this, the Congress is not fake. There are real members of Congress up here, Republicans and Democrats, who love our country and going to make sure that checks and balances that have been in place for 200 years work, even when the president's in your own party.
It also leads to the bigger question, your litany of charges against Russia raised by Tom Friedman this morning. He says the biggest national security question staring us in the face today, what is going on between Donald Trump and the Russians? Right. What's your answer?
Donald Trump is an outlier when it comes to the Russians. I do not know one Republican senator who believes that Russia is anything other than an enemy to democracy, that Russia has tried to interfere in our elections of 2016. I can't explain Donald Trump's view of Russia. Now, starting over, we've tried that twice. So the bottom line here is I'm not going to prejudge why he's the outlier. I'm going to try to find out what relationship his campaign had to the Russians, if any, and if there was a relationship there, then it begins to explain some of his behavior.
Democrats are saying that in order to find out what's really going on there, you need Donald Trump's tax returns. Do you agree?
Maybe so. The first thing I want to do is find out if there was any activity between the Russians and the Trump campaign that was outside the norms, unacceptable. If that is true, then we need to look into all things Russia when it comes to Trump, including his business ties, to help explain where he's coming from. Maybe it's just a policy difference. It's okay for Trump to disagree with Lindsey Graham and other Republicans on how to handle Russia. It would not be okay to have the Trump campaign receiving assistance from the Russians. That would be a game changer.
Senator Graham, thanks very much for joining us this morning.
Thank you.